Welcome to Into the Darkness, where we dive into the most spine-chilling and captivating true crime stories from around the world. Each week, we take you deep into the heart of the darkest mysteries and the most notorious criminals. Our detailed narratives, gripping voiceovers, and vivid visuals will immerse you in the thrilling world of true crime. Subscribe and hit the notification bell to join our community of crime enthusiasts. Get ready to uncover the truth, face the terror, and remember, every story hides a shadow. Now, let's dive into the darkness.
The Bakersfield Heatwave tragedy. Bakersfield, California, sweltered under the relentless sun of a record-breaking heatwave, the thermometer cruelly stuck at 117 Fahrenheit. The air was thick and oppressive, shimmering with heat waves that distorted the landscape and made even the most mundane tasks unbearable. The normally vibrant streets were eerily quiet, the scorching temperatures driving people indoors, seeking refuge from the blazing inferno outside. Amid this infernal backdrop, 19-year-old Jessica Harper staggered through the desolate streets. Her once vibrant blue eyes were now sunken and hollow, reflecting the torment of addiction. Methamphetamine had consumed her life, turning dreams of nursing into nightmares of desperation. Each step felt like an eternity, the oppressive heat amplifying the chaos in her mind. Jessica's target was clear: Kyle Roberts, her ex-boyfriend. The memories of their time together haunted her, each recollection a painful reminder of betrayal. The image of Kyle with another woman, their laughter a cruel mockery of her heartbreak, played on a loop in her mind, fueling a rage that burned hotter than the Bakersfield sun. The methamphetamine coursing through her veins twisted her thoughts, transforming her grief into a dark, relentless thirst for revenge. Kyle lived in a nondescript apartment complex, its faded yellow paint peeling under the relentless sun. The air around the building was thick with the smell of asphalt and distant barbecue smoke, an odd contrast to the sterile clinical environment Jessica had once dreamed of working in. She watched Kyle from the shadows, learning his routines and vulnerabilities, each observation sharpening her resolve. The heat wave had turned Bakersfield into a pressure cooker, and Jessica's mind mirrored the city's unbearable tension. Her plan for revenge was far from simple. In her drug-addled state, she concocted an elaborate scheme that went beyond mere physical harm. She wanted to dismantle Kyle's life piece by piece, to leave him broken and humiliated. Jessica's first move was to gather information, spending days staking out Kyle's apartment. The complex was a maze of identical units, the sun-bleached numbers barely visible. She noted his routines with meticulous care, each detail etched into her mind. The knowledge of his habits gave her a sense of control, a small victory in her chaotic world. Breaking into Kyle's apartment was the next step. She knew where he kept the spare key, hidden under a loose brick by the front door. The thrill of invasion was exhilarating, a rush that temporarily drowned out the despair. Inside, the apartment was cool and orderly, a stark contrast to Jessica's own disheveled existence. She moved through the rooms with purpose, taking his laptop, his collection of rare vinyl records, and a photo album filled with memories of their time together. Each item she stole felt like reclaiming a piece of her shattered heart. Jessica's next move was psychological warfare. She created fake social media accounts, using them to send Kyle a series of anonymous messages. The threats and accusations were carefully crafted to play on his deepest fears, designed to make him question his sanity. As the days went by, Kyle became increasingly paranoid, convinced that someone was watching him, waiting to strike. The paranoia took its toll on Kyle. He began to see shadows in every corner, to hear whispers in the stillness of the night. His once confident demeanor crumbled, replaced by a jittery, anxious shell of a man. Jessica watched from a distance, a twisted sense of satisfaction filling her as she saw the effects of her actions. But it wasn't enough. The voices in her head, amplified by the methamphetamine, urged her to take her plan even further. Jessica's descent into madness was swift and brutal. The methamphetamine, combined with her obsession with revenge, drove her to the brink of insanity. She began to hear voices, whispers in the darkness that told her to escalate her plan. The line between reality and hallucination blurred, and Jessica found herself lost in a nightmare of her own making. The heat wave had turned the city into a furnace, and Jessica's mind mirrored the city's oppressive atmosphere. She spent her nights in a rundown motel, the air conditioning unit sputtering ineffectively against the relentless heat. The room was a reflection of her life, littered with discarded needles and fast food wrappers. The walls, stained with nicotine and neglect, seemed to close in on her, the whispers growing louder and more insistent. One night, in the dead of summer, she decided to confront Kyle face to face. She waited outside his apartment, hidden in the shadows, until he came home. Her heart pounded in her chest, the adrenaline mixing with the drugs to create a potent cocktail of fear and excitement. As he approached, she stepped out of the darkness, a knife clutched in her trembling hand. Kyle's eyes widened in shock as he saw her. "Jessica, what the hell are you doing here?" She didn't answer, her mind too clouded to form coherent words. Instead, she lunged at him, the knife flashing in the dim light. Kyle managed to dodge the initial attack, grabbing her wrist and trying to wrestle the weapon from her grip. They struggled, the heat and the fear making the air thick and suffocating. In the chaos, the knife slipped from Jessica's hand, clattering to the ground. Kyle took the opportunity to push her away, sending her sprawling onto the hot pavement. She lay there, gasping for breath, as he stood over her, his face a mask of confusion and anger. "What's wrong with you, Jessica? Why are you doing this?" Tears streamed down her face as she looked up at him, the reality of her actions finally sinking in. "I just wanted you to feel the pain you caused me," she sobbed. "I wanted you to suffer like I have." Kyle shook his head, a mix of pity and frustration in his eyes. "This isn't the way, Jess. You need help." Jessica's breakdown in front of Kyle was the turning point. He called the police, and she was taken into custody, her mind still reeling from the drugs and the intensity of her emotions. In the days that followed, the full extent of her psychosis became apparent. She was diagnosed with methamphetamine-induced psychosis and transferred to a mental health facility. The mental health facility was a world away from the hell Jessica had created for herself. The sterile, white-walled rooms were a stark contrast to the chaos of her motel room. The staff, calm and professional, worked tirelessly to help her piece together the fragments of her shattered mind. Each therapy session was a painful excavation of her past, uncovering the roots of her addiction and the events that had led her to this point. During one such session, Jessica's therapist revealed a shocking truth. The woman she had seen with Kyle, the catalyst for her entire plan, was not a lover or a fling. She was his sister, visiting from out of town to support him after a recent breakup with someone else. Jessica's mind, twisted by drugs and paranoia, had turned an innocent relationship into a sinister betrayal. The revelation shattered Jessica's fragile psyche. The guilt and shame were overwhelming, and she struggled to come to terms with the fact that her actions had been based on a delusion. In the months that followed, she worked with her therapist to rebuild her life, to find a way to move forward despite the darkness that had consumed her. But reality was far more complex. Subtle clues began to surface, hinting that all was not as it seemed. Occasionally, Jessica would notice odd inconsistencies. A date on a newspaper that didn't align, a familiar face from the facility appearing in her supposed real world. The whispers of suspicion grew louder, and she couldn't shake the feeling that her experiences were part of a larger, more insidious delusion. Jessica's recovery seemed slow and arduous, but the truth was more tragic. In fleeting moments of clarity, she found herself staring out the window of her hospital room, watching the world pass by with a sense of detachment. The leaves of the trees swayed gently in the breeze, their vibrant green mocking her desolation. Each time she allowed herself to think about her future, a strange fog clouded her thoughts, pulling her back into the cycle of hallucination. The ultimate revelation came not in a dramatic epiphany but in a quiet, soul-crushing moment of realization. Jessica had never left the mental institution. She had been a patient there for the past 2 years, since she was 17, never recovering from the meth-induced psychosis. Her elaborate revenge plot against Kyle, the heatwave, the motel, all of it was a figment of her damaged mind, a continuous loop of hallucinations that she could not escape. Jessica's life was a tragic testament to the destructive power of addiction. The methamphetamine had twisted her reality beyond recognition, trapping her in a permanent state of delusion. The staff at the facility did their best to manage her condition, but the damage was too severe. She lived out her days in a state of perpetual confusion, her mind a prison of her own making. As the seasons changed outside her window, Jessica remained lost in her hallucinations, forever reliving the same twisted narrative. Her once bright future had been stolen by the insidious grip of addiction, leaving behind only a shell of the person she had once been. The world outside moved on, but for Jessica Harper, time stood still, her life a tragic reminder of the fragile line between reality and madness.